Welcome to another tech vid. Today, you'll learn how to set up the new Sophos DMARC Manager. This add-on for Sophos Email delivers comprehensive DMARC management capabilities, providing domain visibility, SPF and DKIM alignment, automated policy enforcement, and domain scoring. This is the first video in a two-part series. In the next part, we cover how to monitor and review reports and set up alerts. The link can be found in the description. Let's dive in. Domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance, or DMARC, prevents domain spoofing and phishing by allowing domain owners to control how unauthenticated messages are handled. Implementation enhances protection, deliverability, and visibility by aligning SPF and DKIM records, enforcing authentication policies, and utilizing reports to strengthen email security. Additional features include brand indicators for message identification, or BIMI, MTA-STS, and TLS-RPT. In this tech vid, you'll learn how to add and verify your domain and configure SPF. Then I'll show you how to add DKIM keys and configure BIMI. Lastly, I'll demonstrate how to configure TLS-RPT. Before starting, ensure you have admin access to Sophos Central and your DNS Manager. A Sophos Central DMARC Manager add-on license for Email Advanced and a list of existing and known senders using your domain. You must have a validated domain in gateway or mailflow mode. Lastly, ensure you have the necessary VMC certificate if you're configuring BIMI. For more information, refer to the documentation linked in the description. Let's get started. If this is your first time setting up Sophos Email and aren't routing traffic through Sophos, refer to the setup instructions linked in the description before proceeding. In Sophos Central, navigate to My Products, Email Protection, then Settings. If you're in Gateway mode, select Gateway Domain Settings and Status. Otherwise, choose M365 Mailflow Domain Settings and Status, which I'll do. Under DMARC Reporting, click Not Verified to start the DMARC Manager setup. If you've already configured your DMARC policy, Sophos will automatically import any existing DMARC and SPF records that were published. Your initial settings may differ from the default settings, so you'll only need to review them for accuracy. If you haven't configured a DMARC record before, it's recommended to leave the DMARC policy set to None for the initial monitoring stages. Once you've onboarded your domain, have started sending emails for a couple of weeks, and are satisfied after adjustments were made, you may set this to Quarantine or Reject. You may add any additional recipients of aggregate and failure reports here. If you're unsure of what to enter, leave this blank. If you wish to receive failure reports for future investigations, under Failure Reports, ensure report processing is set to Enabled. Read the disclaimer before continuing. You can also choose when to receive these by selecting the relevant report options. In my case, I'll set it to SPF or DKIM fail and don't align. Lastly, DKIM alignment and SPF alignment are the two options available under Alignment Settings. These may be set to either Relaxed or Strict. I'll leave this as the default mode, which is Relaxed. If you're not sure what to select, leave this as is. Click Save. For more details on how this works, refer to the links in the description. Next, publish the new DMARC record. Note: as conflicting DNS entries may be deleted, there may be a period of downtime after it's removed. Always schedule changes during a less busy period to minimize service disruptions. There are two methods to update your DNS records. The easiest way is using Entry, a DNS API tool that simplifies DNS updates and supports all major DNS providers. Alternatively, you can configure your DNS records manually through your DNS provider. If you choose this route, there are two ways to do this. The first is using DNS delegation through CNAME records, which lets our services dynamically update and handle any changes made to your DNS records from within the DMARC Manager portal. The second is manually using TXT records. Note, if you choose to use TXT records, you must also update your DNS records anytime a change is made. I'll show both methods here, but for the rest of this tech vid, I'll only show the DNS delegation method, as it's recommended. Note, before making changes to your DNS, it's always recommended to make a backup of your DNS zones in case rollback is required. Click View Setup Instructions, select Configure DNS, then click Continue. Entry will then attempt to detect your name provider. However, if this fails, check that your provider is in the supported list and select it manually. In this case, I'm using GoDaddy. Next, approve and authorize the steps after reviewing the terms and conditions. Once complete, you're presented with a page of which DNS records will be added and which will be removed if there are conflicts. Using the entry method, it will always configure the DNS delegation methods when possible. For the rest of this tech vid, I won't be using entry to configure our DNS records. However, if your DNS provider does support entry, take advantage of this feature to simplify your deployment. Next, if your DNS manager was not in the supported list, configure the DNS record manually within your provider. I'll start with verifying using the DNS delegation method, which is recommended. Select View Setup Instructions, then configure a new CNAME record using the values provided. In your DNS provider, set the host name as DMARC, and under the alias, enter the provided value. Note, some providers like Cloudflare have features such as proxy enabled by default. This must be disabled to operate correctly. If you wish to use the manual method, expand Use TXT record instead, copy the value, and publish the TXT record. If you choose to use this method and make any changes in your DMARC settings, you'll need to republish your TXT record every time to publish the changes. Next, click Verify. It may take some time for your DNS records to propagate, so try again after a few minutes if the first attempt is unsuccessful. For this initial stage, you've now configured your DMARC record. Later, after making further adjustments, you may set your policy to quarantine or reject. Next, I'll configure SPF. Start by adding all your known and existing SPF directives. If you have an existing SPF record, the DMARC manager will try to import your existing SPF record directives. Use this time to clean up any stale or unnecessary entries. As I'm using Sophos email in gateway mode, I'll make sure to add the Sophos SPF record relevant to my region. In Sophos Central, under Email Protection, click Settings, Gateway Domain Settings and Status. Then click Configure External Dependencies, Outbound Settings. Note down your region. Then navigate to Instructions for Common Providers and select your relevant provider. This will provide the proper SPF record and format to use in your respective region. In my case, I'll copy the following record. Then I'll add a new SPF directive with the record type set to include and use the copied value as the host value. Make sure to include any other known third-party services that send email on your domain's behalf that don't go through Sophos as a directive. This may include services like newsletters, ticketing systems, or even printing services. Note, if you're using Mailflow mode or don't send any outbound email through Sophos, include the provided SPF records supplied by your provider. This may look similar to the following. If anything is missing, this should be caught during your monitoring phases, which I'll cover in the next video. Once all SPF directives are added, you may enable SPF flattening. This helps to reduce the number of DNS lookups, which is limited to 10 due to the RFC. Under Top Level Record Qualifier, set the desired action. In my case, I'll set it to Hard Fail. Once all known senders have been added, update the TXT record to Publish and Delegate. If you have an existing SPF record, remove the previous entry and enter the new redirect value instead. If you don't wish to use delegation, expand use txt record instead and use the provided values. As a reminder, if you choose this method, any changes or updates will require you to republish the record each time. Then click Verify. Next, add any existing DKIM keys or selectors by publishing the public keys through the manager. If you're signing outbound emails with Sophos, navigate to Settings, Gateway Domain Settings and Status, and select your domain. Then select the currently active DKIM key. Copy the values and paste them into the DMARC Manager portal. Note, if you're using Mailflow mode, your DKIM selector should look similar to the following. You don't need to add domain key as it's added automatically. Now do the same for any other known DKIM keys from third-party systems that may not flow through Sophos email. In outbound signing policy, if all emails are signed with DKIM, ensure all emails is selected. Otherwise, select some emails. Since this is the initial onboarding, in testing mode, select Enabled. Once the initial monitoring phase has completed, you can change this to Disabled. Then click Save. Next, follow the DKIM setup instructions by updating the namespace records for domain key. Note, some DNS providers don't offer support for updating name servers. In this case, you can't take advantage of DKIM delegation unless your provider supports NS updates or you move to another DNS manager. Once your records have been published, click Verify. Bimmy allows for some supported mail clients to display a logo for verified emails. Your logo must be in an SVG format, and it's recommended to be formatted in a square aspect ratio. If you have a verified MARC certificate, or VMC, upload it here in a PEM format. If you don't have a VMC, you need to obtain this from a third-party provider, which involves validating registered trademarks and passing their compliance. Note, this step isn't required. However, some providers and mail clients only display logos if there is a valid VMC. Sophos will host the logo and certificate for you to make the process seamless without involving other hosting services. Next, click Save. Publish your record by creating a new CNAME record with the default Bimmy name. Finally, click Verify. Note, if you wish to manually deploy a Bimmy record, you may copy the provided TXT value instead. Lastly, I'll configure TLS, RPT, and MTA STS reporting. I'll start by configuring TLS RPT reporting first. Optionally, if you ingest this data to other services, enter the email addresses here. Then select View Setup Instructions and configure the CNAME records matching the values provided. Click Verify. Repeat these steps if you have this enabled for MTA STS. Under Policy Enforcement Level, select which level to use. If this is your first time configuring and you're not sure which is appropriate, it's best to select In Testing. Click Save once completed. Once your settings have been configured in Sophos Central, the DMARC reporting status has changed to Not Reporting. This is expected until a report has been received, but you may continue sending outbound emails as normal. However, not all mail providers send DMARC reports. Even major providers that do only send reports every 24 to 48 hours. This learning period is expected, so check back after 72 hours. To intentionally generate aggregate DMARC reports, send some outbound emails to major known providers that generate reports, such as Microsoft, Google, and Yahoo. After a few days, the status will change to Reporting. You've successfully configured the DMARC Manager. And that completes the configuration of the Sophos DMARC Manager. I hope you found this useful. Make sure to watch the next part in the series where we cover how to monitor and review reports and set up alerts. The link can be found in the description. The relevant documentation and other comprehensive resources for this TechVid are linked in the video description. Join the Sophos community to stay up to date with our products, ask questions, and have your questions answered by Sophos experts. And go to Sophos TechVids for more expert tutorials to help you maximize your products and stay secure. See you next time.